welcome to the beginning of the activities of the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Comic Festival. One second, please. I need to take something. No, exactly here. And this event in which Spain is the guest country. And first, I want to thank to help and support provided by the Finnish Comic Society, the Spanish Embassy in Finland, and the Foundation for the Promotion and Study of Narrative in Image. Thanks to them, has been possible to make this event possible. This has been a big journey, and the idea began in 2019. Was a mix between the Spanish Embassy in Finland and the Finnish Comic Society, but the last year, for the pandemic situation, everything was postponed, or in that case, postponed. And this year, we'll begin to work in the same topic. And at last, has been possible to do this event. Today, we meet with Xulia Vicente, a comic book artist from Spain. She born in 1993 in A Coruña, in the city of Cariño. I hope that everything is good. And then he went to Valencia to study a degree in fine art. And after that, she decided to reside in that place. If everything is okay, because she sent me his CV, I think 1 day ago. Her first comic book was in 2015, Anna Dédalus, The Mystery of the Barner Mansion. In 2016, that was when I know that Xulia Vicente was a comic book artist. Before that, I have no idea. Sorry, that is true. She began to work in the Dragon Seal trilogy from Sallybooks, a Spanish editorial. Her first album was 80, Cazador de Dragones, and the second was Ira, Dragon Hunter. One thing I want to say about her, she's capable to draw a wonderful dragon, an incredible warrior, or the story of two women that love each other. That is the main topic of this meeting. After that, he continued to work in comic book and illustration. And one thing I really, really like to read, but maybe a little bit complicated, is a comic book or a book with illustration. The War Between Yellow Emperor and Young Emperor is a comic book or
it's a picture book.
Picture book, yes. It's for Beijing Kid Media. She told me before began this meeting that this quite difficult. I need to talk with someone probably in the Chinese embassy here in Finland, but I want to read. And her last job will be I See a Night with a public short box. First at all, thank you very much to say yes to this meeting.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, no, it's not the first time I talked with you this year, but I really enjoyed the first time. And when I begin to work in this event, I thought that you are the right person, because not only because you are a really good comic book artist and a really, really nice person when we meet with you, is because you make one of the most beautiful and realistic comic about the love between two women. Because Elisa and Marcela, or Elisa and Marcela, or Elisa y Marcela in Spanish. Well, the comics is actually only in Gallego, and I think you told me the last time, now it will be possible to read in French.
Yes, correct.
Yes,
it's coming out, I think, in September.
But not in Spanish.
Not
Why?
in Spanish yet. I don't know if we'll do something about it, but you know, it was meant to be a very small project for Galicia.
Yeah, the thing is, well, I need to explain something about the topic. The marriage between two persons of the same sex was began in 2005 in Spain. Before that, before the dictatorship regime, the homosexuality is something not forbidden. It's much more than that. Because from someone that born and live in Finland, the concept of the church, or the religious, or wherever, or the religion is totally different than in Spain. The influence of the Catholic church in Spain is so huge. Before the dictatorship regime, during and after. Actually, in the actual situation, many things change, but it's very difficult to fight against something that for centuries is inside the Spanish society. And the homosexuality, even in Finland, normally is a topic that not everyone wants to talk about that. But this case, the case of Elisa and Marcela, or Elisa and Marcela, is something I don't know how to describe, because Marcela Gracia Ibeas and Elisa Sanchez Loriga was the name of the two women. Their marriage was a Roman Imperial. I was in a church in a Coruña. Was the 8 June 1901. 120 years. And the thing is, after that, after all the problems, anyone inside the church destroy or say this marriage was not legal.
They hid it. I mean, they didn't destroy it, they didn't deny it, but they kind of tried to hide what had just happened. It was a big thing. I mean, we know about that story nowadays because all the press in the country was focused on that story because it was, something very weird that just happened.
The first cover,
yeah,
I have it's possible to find is someone understand Spanish. You put the Elisa y Marcela, La Voz de Galicia, and you find in internet the 2-page when you see the picture is so huge because the newspaper was bigger. Normally the newspaper in the beginning of the 20th century in Spain and in every country was so huge, even in Finland, because I saw Finnish newspaper from the beginning of the 20th century are so huge. But you see the image and it's practically all over the cover.
Yes, it was the gossip of the moment. And it's very special because, to be able to do this, one of the two women, this is important to explain this story, one of the two women had to dress as a man. So he called himself Mario. And so when they discovered Mario was in fact Elisa, everybody went crazy. First it was in the village, but then it escalated to a national press event. And so I don't know, that must have been very shameful for the church itself to have made such a mistake, because they even baptized Mario for him to have all the papers and stuff. But it's what you say, they didn't destroy all that evidence afterwards, and it's just funny they didn't do it. It's very weird.
Exactly. And I understand that now the transgender concept, even imagine that Elisa like to be a real man, because why not?
That's something that came up to me when doing the story, and you cannot know, because we have very little information about how they were or how they presented. But that's something that's in the air and that it's possible. But we don't really know about it. So you can imagine that would would have been the case. She was said to be very masculine, to have a gun, to present with a male hat. You know, it could have been possible. But even if she was transgender, that wouldn't have been recognized back then. So
no, the concept is even today so in some ways so new that the people don't know exactly what is a transgender person. This concept is so complicated for many people. Actually, in the 21st century, in the 20th century, is sci-fi. I understand not, but the thing is, for example, in my case, the first time I heard something about Elisa and Marcela was because I read something that Emilia Pardo Bazán, one of my favorite writer in Spain, this woman was incredible in the moment when she began to war and she began to fight for the women right in Spain in a place where actually for the women it's more difficult to do things that, for example, in Finland, because probably you have no idea and I have no idea until a few weeks, but the first country where the women have the right to vote was Finland in the beginning of the 20th century.
Really?
Yes. Finland was the first. Before United Kingdom, before all the people have the image of these women that run in front of the horses in United Kingdom to say something because I thought that the king is in this place and this woman died because the horse smashed to her and she died. I think in the same moment. But I think 10 years before that, someone in this country understand that the women have the same right that the men too. But in Spain, no. In Spain, I think was in the 60s. Yeah. Because the women have right during in the 30s, but when the dictatorship regime began, everything was destroyed. But,
yeah, I was about to say, I think in the Republic they
could
have vote.
Yeah. Yes, but after that, not. But Emilia Pardo Bazán was this woman from the 21st century that she understands many things that actually there are many men that do not understand in Spain. For that reason, it's not funny, but sometimes it's funny how ignorant is the people in our country that the people don't speak about this woman, and is one of the best writers, and she write about a lot of things, and she was incredible. She fight against everything.
I have the feeling that she's been more reclaimed now, bit by bit. I've been hearing more about her lately, so I get a feeling that she'll be a figure that will probably get back bit by bit.
Because she is the Me Too movement 70 years before. Yes, it's that kind of person that in that moment is impossible because all the society is closed to everything. But now is when you see behind and you understand that this person is much better than you believe, and the society, and in one moment the society say, yes, it's true.
I mean, we are riding on the shoulders of giants in the end. The whole feminist movement, queer movement right now, Black Lives Matter movement, we are riding on the shoulders of the people that came before us. Yes. There were a lot of people that were doing all these sacrifices to make their voice heard, and all those people were important to get to the point where we are now, where we are, we're not there. We are not where we would like to be, but we are certainly better than before. So, and that's thanks to all these people that came before us. There were a lot of very important people for these movements, and get its ideas out before we could do that. So that's where we are. We are here thanks to them.
And for that reason, it's so important have memory, and for that reason, it's so important job with your job, because with the comic book, with this comic book, a small part of the big picture, for to say something. I told before we began to talk about the Isabel Coixet movie, and I understand that you choose one topic, she choose another topic.
Yeah, a way of focusing it, the way of focusing on it is different, maybe.
Exactly.
I mean, the topic is the same. It's you know, showing their lives or talking about their lives, but I think she really went for a more personal view of it. She even changed some things that we know weren't like that to make, you know, a dramatic movie. And I had more the job to do you know, the comic that told the story just how we know it was, the most
accurate
way of
exactly.
telling it.
No,
But because this comic was a job commissioned to me by, you know, the
yes.
Consello da Cultura Galega. So, you know, I had to do it that way, even if I had total freedom to write it however I wanted. But it had to be as truthful to the story that I could.
The question is how, because I know, because it's part of my job too. When you receive this type of request, everyone have a different approach. And how, I suppose for you is a wow, because it's especially because it's a really nice story, and it's important that the new generation know about these things actually in the 21st century. But how was the process? How when you receive the request from this official place, in that case official institution, what was the first step you do, and the second and the third, and before you begin to draw anything in a paper?
Well, first off, there was the book that by Narciso de Gabriel, who gathered all the information, because I mean, this man, he alone gathered all the information. He found the news in one newspaper because he, you know, he gathers information from old papers and found this the first time. And so he tried to draw the whole picture and find all the pieces of information he could find from this era. And so he wrote the story from all these pieces of information, and that book is the main data information we
Yes.
have from this story. So I read that book, and afterwards I had a lot of information in my head and didn't know how to process it. So, you know, I also contacted people that were in contact with this story as well. So you know, there's the movie, there's Elisa and Marcela by Isabel Coixet, but there's also this theatrical, how do you say that?
Play.
Obra de teatro. This play,
Theatrical play.
this theater play, by three girls from Galicia, and so I contacted them to, you know, to change some ideas with them, and also more people. I even contacted my own aunt to know about the clothes of the era, you know, because I had some pictures but didn't know how the boots were or things like that, you know. So I contacted a few people, but mainly these girls from a panaderia. They helped me a lot to bounce ideas with them, and it was a very curious experience for me, because for me comics has always been a very independent thing, a very solitary thing, uh, but in a good way. But this time I was afraid because, you know, I knew I couldn't do it alone, and the fact that I could change ideas with so many wonderful people, and you know, the script changed so much from beginning to end, and it helped so much for the story to become better, a lot better, I think. but you know, that whole process took months, and then I was left with a final script and like a month and a half to draw the whole thing, and that's how I got to do it. I had to ask for a few more pages from Consello da Cultura, because originally I think we were going to do it in 24 pages. I asked for 25, 26, because it was a lot of information. I didn't want to miss anything, and even in the end, the story is, you know, it feels short. It feels there's so much more, and you can't grasp it. But you know, there are other people that worked about this story, and I hope there will be more versions in the future, because there's still so much to explore and so much to, you know, to take from these ideas and even explore it further, like the girls from the play did. And so that was the hardest part for me in the process, is the script, and this one in particular was a challenge, because it was a historical story, and it was a historical story that was particularly resonating with me. So it was a challenge, and I overcame it the way I knew how to.
No, I understand your feeling, because it's always the same when you have too many information. When you sit down, I need to choose. When you prepare an exhibition, you decide, no, probably I need, I don't know, 50 objects, but I choose 100, and allow you have 150, and you need to choose 30, and you need to left 120. The problem is what? Because you want to show everything. And it's exactly the same. You have one space, and you don't have enough space to put everything. This is fun.
And I even decided to add one handicap more, because I wanted to play a bit with kind of a surprise for the story. So I even played with I played with two time, I don't know how to say
timeline.
Yeah, with two timelines. So that made it, I was suffering because I didn't know if people would understand that. So, you know, I had to use date placement all the time. But I think that added to the experience a bit, more than if it were just, you know, the linear story, and that was it. So I wanted to do it. It was a handicap more to add to the mix, but it was worth it, I think.
If you had the opportunity, because I told you that actually the album is in Gallego and will be in French. If you had the opportunity to do a normal album with 48 or even 56 pages, do you want to do a new version, the director cut version of the comic book, like for example in Marvel, DC, or wherever, that do one version, and after many years it's the same version with 12, 15, 40 more pages?
I was actually talking about this same thing recently. The thing with me is I don't like to repeat things.
No, I understand.
But I mean, this album has to happen sooner or later. Maybe I won't be the one making it, but it's going to happen, because, you know, the story is just too good to pass on. But I don't know. I wouldn't be able to do it like now or in 5 years. You know, maybe in the future, if I could think of another way to, you know, to give it a little bit of a different angle to look at it, or, you
Different
know,
approach.
something
Yes.
different to add to it, because right now, you know, it's just too recent. I've already done all the research. I laid it down, and, you know, I'm kind of done with it right now, so I wouldn't be able to do it in the near future. No.
Uh, I suppose you are a artist, you are a creator. I am a creator too. You use draw, I use word, but normally you like one character, one topic much more than other. If you choose, when you begin to do this job, you try to understand the mentality of both women, or you are more comfortable with the Marcela character or the Elisa character?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I think I might have been more inclined to the personality of Elisa at first, because she's the character that changes uh, her gender presentation to do all these things, is the one kind of leading the relationship in a way that she's protective of Marcela. She seems to be the one that has more agency, so it feels at first that she might be the most interesting character. But after a while, you start to focus on Marcela, because she's more enigmatic. You get less information from her in the book in the end, so it's more mysterious. It's more of an enigma, and that makes her very interesting, because she was there and she was ready. She was so ready to do everything that they planned to do, and I think she was an active part of it, and that makes it in the end maybe not more interesting, but as interesting for sure. So I don't know. I think in the end, I grew more fond of Marcela, maybe because of all these things I was thinking about, the relationship, and how she was kind of the silent voice in it, but also so ready to do all the thing until the end, because they traveled from Portugal to Argentina, I think it was in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's a crazy trip, and they were both so ready to do it. And that's just, one cannot do it without the other. They are just such a pack together. It's hard
Yes, but
to really tell who started the whole thing.
I know that you don't really like the approach of Isabel Coixer, but I think she has the same approach like you. Because I have seen 2 times the movie. I have seen when the movie was present in Netflix, and I have seen today. And I think it's exactly the same. In some way, and I saw every movie of Isabel Coixer. I think it's exactly the same. In the beginning, you like much more Elisa because she's more open and more nicer in many ways. But in one moment, you begin to understand much better the silence of Marcela.
Mm.
The
Did you
the
get that feeling also from my comic?
yes, 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 because in your comic the you draw the character of Elisa in one way and the character of or Marcela in a different way.
Mm.
Because I read your comic from the last 3 years, and for me this is a real job, and I try to do in the best way possible. I read the Ari and Ira, I think 4 times every comic book before our first meeting, because I have a complicated approach to my job with these things.
Mm.
And with the Elisa and Marcela, and with this kind of movies, exactly the same. The first time I sit down and don't think too much, and after that I want to see 2 or 3 times more to find a specific moment, a specific scene when I understand that the director, even the actors, focus much more energy than in the other.
Mm.
The good thing where your comic is every page have the capacity to explain a lot of things.
Yeah.
Every page have their own story inside. It's a 26 page, but every page have a small history, and it's really nice how you fix everything, put everything inside in the same page, because there are one, for example, when you see in one page, you see the different news in the newspaper, the different titulars and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and inside one page you have 6 different approach from the same topic, because not everything. I try to find more information about the Elisa and Marcela, and I read an article that Spido Freire wrote in 2006, I think, and it's a good article because she focused to explain how difficult and how complicated it was to be a teacher in that moment. How the rules to be a teacher is like to stay in the, I think it's more easy to stay in the Marine Corps until to be a teacher in the beginning of the 20th century in Spain. And the code, the code of conduct for a teacher is so horrible.
I read that. It's crazy.
Horrible. But she say at the last in the finished sentence of her article that is the double side of the moral in our country. The people don't like something in front of the people, but when they go inside, they have a different, total different approach from the same things. I think there are many. For example, there are one scene in the Isabel Coxer movie when one woman cut the big picture and put in the wall, and because it's something you put, and I think this is the thing. In some way, the good part with the Isabel Coxer movie is the detail you put in your comic book, because your comic is in some way a picture of the reality from our country in that moment. Unfortunately,
or at least it tries to be.
No, but it's really nice because you need to I suppose from I understand that the beginning of the 20th century there are not so many public libraries that actually there are in for example in Helsinki, in the place where I live, because in Helsinki, Helsinki, Espoo, Vantaa, Kauniainen, there live 1 million of people, and there are 56 public libraries. Last year during the pandemic was fun because during the pandemic someone decided to make up advertise and put something how many public libraries there are in that area, how many people were inside, and how many books, and there are much more than 2 million of books in all these libraries. So it's approximately there are 2 books from every people that live in that area, including me. And I suppose in the beginning of the 20th century situation is not the same. But for someone that lives in Finland, it's difficult to understand that in the beginning of the 20th century, only I think the 22% of the people in Spain know to read and to write. Something like that. I don't know exactly, because I read this statistic a few years ago, and now there are a new approach and more data, but was something between 22, 23% in the beginning of the 20th century. And the situation changed a little bit with the Second Republic, but not too much, because the Second Republic only...
There was no time.
Exactly. After the Civil War, the situation was more horrible, because normally during these 3 years, one of the main targets was the teachers, and from both sides, but especially from one side. And sorry, the data say that. It's not because my mentality is from one side or not from other. The data from the side that win the war is clear. The teacher was one of the main target during especially in between 1936 to 1937, in the first year of the Spanish Civil War. And the situation was really, really horrible until I think the beginning of the 60s. And when I read the first time your comic book, I feel exactly the same that when I read for example, the books of Emilia Pardo Bazán, or even, for example, when I spent 2 years reading things about the Auxilio Social, the place where the children without parents after the Civil War put inside from the regime. Well, it was in 1937 that the Falange Española created the Auxilio Social, something that before that created in the Germany I think it was in 1935 in Germany. And I spent 3 years working in that topic, and it's exactly the same. This comic book, your comic book, is a X-ray or a picture from the reality of our country in the beginning of the 20th century and during many decades after that. And I suppose it's too hard from someone that born in 1993 in theory in a democratic place like a democratic country like Spain, when now you and me have the opportunity to sit down you in your in Spain, I in Finland, and talk about this, and we don't need to think is someone heard our meeting and someone decide that you and me are subversive guys or something like that. Because in the 50s and in the 60s, even in the 70s, there are one law that prevent that the homosexual people, the people that a different approach to the sexual relationships, someone like you and me, we are a dangerous guy, a dangerous person from the society, and say why? Because we do not do anything dangerous. We have a different approach for something. It's something, I suppose, crazy actually in the 21st century, but in the 20th century, no. And I suppose it's difficult to sit down and draw something when your approach about this topic is totally different. Because for me, when I write something about these topics, or for example the abuse, I don't, in my mentality, even the small abuse is bad. Even the funny thing that is quite normal in Spain when someone arrives the first time in a new job, for me this is dangerous. Because there are people who understand that it's good to do something funny when you arrive, but not everyone have the same concept. And unfortunately, there are many sadistic guys that decide to do horrible things with the new people arrive to a new place. In my mentality, this is horrible and I don't tolerate. And with this topic, it's exactly the same. I don't understand why someone want to do something against someone that do something is not bad. Because Elisa and Marcela only want to be happy.
Yes, they only wanted to be happy together. Exactly.
They don't want to do something. Well, another thing that, for example, I like not the movie, to the screenplay of the Isabel Coixer, is when Marcela is eating with their parents, and her dad say, learn but not too much, and not every books are good.
Yes.
These two sentences are horrible, but are so real. Actually, in the 21st century,
they are so characteristic of the idiosyncrasy of the the country.
Exactly. The person that wrote this screenplay know very well what happened in our country in the beginning of the 20th century, and unfortunately, actually. But I don't want to ask something uncomfortable for you, but what was the more difficult thing to do when you sit down to write a comic book?
A comic book like in general, or Elisa and Marcela?
Elisa and Marcela.
The most difficult thing, I wouldn't. In this case in particular, I think it was, having them. I'm a creator that likes to focus on the small details in human interaction. The expressions or the small talk or all of that stuff. I like to find it when I read, and I like to do it myself. And in this case, it was very difficult because what the press was getting at that time was, the big picture. They got married, and Mario got baptized.
Sorry, the sentence was marry without men.
Yeah,
That's the big
marriage
sentence.
without a man.
Exactly, it was something, but in big scale. The letter was the more bigger letter that was possible to find in a printer in that moment.
So we had all these, like the actions. We had the big actions, but we didn't know of the small talk. We didn't really know how they were, what kind of people they were, because there were actually a lot of small interviews from supposedly uh, people from the same village, but you could see when reading them that they were ill-intended, like they were talking bad about them because they didn't like two women that liked each other. So they were saying things like Elisa was very rough and treated people badly and all that kind of stuff that you read and you tell to yourself, this is not it. These people clearly were trying to hurt. So I had barely any information about how they were or how they talked to each other and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the fiction happens mostly. And that was difficult because I wanted to be truthful to the story, but I had to make up all these things that to make the characters human, to make them feel real, and to make you like them, and all that kind of stuff was up to me completely. So you can tell there are some scenes that are totally just me trying to make you like them in some way, and that was hard because there I had a kind of a base for everything except for that.
No, I understand, because when you don't have enough information, you need. There are a sentence that I know that the example is quite rare, but there are one movie from Sylvester Stallone when was in Daylight, when she go inside that tunnel in New York, and there are some problem with him when he worked in the emergency service, and he met with some writer, and she asked what happened, and he began to explain only a few things, and he said to this woman, "You are a writer, write in between." Because if you are a writer, you know what happened in between. I only say to you a few topic, and you know what happened between any topic because you are a writer. But if you don't have even this small sentence to write in the middle, it's quite difficult too. And I understand that.
If you don't know the characters, because a writer that writes fiction has to write the characters, but I was writing with two characters I didn't know, and I know they were true and that they existed, but I didn't know them. So it felt hard to write people that were real without knowing anything about them. So it's very tricky.
No, but I think that the good thing with the graphic approach of one story is you don't need to write too much, because one thing I really like, that the first time I told you the first time we met through this channel, because the first time we met was in person, but only I think 2 or 3 minutes. When I read the Ira, this comic book is behind me. I don't read the text. I read the image, because not because the screenplay is really nice. It's not because I don't like. It's because I really enjoy how you draw the character and the dragons and everything around you. And something you told before, how you draw every detail of everything in every panel if you have the opportunity.
But
After
yeah,
that,
to be fair,
I read image and text, and I enjoy much more because I understand much more the situation. With the Elisa and Marcela comic book, you have this, even my Gallego is not so nice, but I understand, I think, well, and I know how to write in the middle if necessary. But even if you don't read, you don't need to read. It's actually, I think it's on. I found in internet it's possible to download the PDF of the comic book.
Yes.
I including
it's free. It's intended.
yes.
It's legal. It's not you know,
No.
unfair
It's free.
download.
It's possible to download in a
it's free
official
for
page.
everybody.
Exactly.
Yes.
I put all the information in a big exhibition I prepare about all the authors invited to this event. And if someone wants to download, it's possible. And even if you don't read Spanish, in that case, Gallego, in many ways you don't need to, because the images are capable to explain a lot of things. And this is, I don't know.
To be fair about what you were saying about Ida, to be fair, I mean, Ida, it's way easier for me because Manuel writes all these characters,
Yes.
and you know, he sends me all this information about them, and it's already there, and it's very easy for me to work with Manuel because I don't know, his scripts just tell me so much, and as I'm reading them, I'm already making the pictures in my head. I couldn't do this with Elisa and Marcela because the data I had wasn't a script. It wasn't meant to be made into a play or a film or a comic. It was made to show you how the story was, and it was, you know, very cold, very, you know, this is the information. So I had to develop a story. With Ira or Ari, I have a story already, and it's just translated it, and it happens already in my head. I'm very intuitive with that. But this had some extra job of me to doing all this writing. I think, you know, I'm mostly an artist. I'm mostly a drawer, but I cannot do a story by myself without writing first and doing all this thinking process of what I want to portray, and you know, organizing the information, and you know, establishing what this character is, what it means to a story, what they mean to each other, and all of this stuff. So you cannot overpass writing because you don't see that much of it in the final product. It's important to have it before. I know there are people that can work without writing, and even, you know, jump to the storyboard or even to the pencils and just do it at their own pace at the same time, maybe, and that works for them. But it hasn't yet worked with me. I know I work way better when I have something before that.
You don't have the sorry, because maybe the question is so personal, but you don't have the temptation to try to be one of the two characters and try to think in the same way, and because this is something that sometimes is I remember I don't know what the TV was in black and white before you born. That was in, I think it was in the beginning of the 80s, because the color the TV color in Spain was in the beginning of the 80s, in the 20th century. I saw an adaptation of Antigona, the classic Greek play, made with normal clothes, and made with the same approach that the normal, something in some way like the Romeo and Juliet Romeo and Juliet of Baz Luhrmann. But in that case, that was a real play with the same character, with exactly the same, but they don't use the Greek dress. They use normal. And the good thing with this Antigona is one of the most classical Greek plays of forever, is that every character, not only they use the classical text, but in some way every character puts something personal in this character. because you see, if you know something about the background of the actors, it's like we want to do this and choose the character you really like. That's the thing. The casting director don't choose you what the character you want to, because I suppose now it's more easy to know, before that not, but one of the most famous sentence of the Star Wars was when Han Solo say to Leia, I love you, Leia say I love you, and he say, I know. This was not in the original screenplay. That's something that Harrison Ford told with Irving Kessner 1 hour before they began to do the things. And they sit down in the set, in the stairs of the set in the set of Vespin, and they began to talk, and Irving Kessner began to wrote in the screenplay. They changed the Lauren Kasdan screenplay and do something different, because in some way, I think in that moment is when Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher really understand the character of Leia and Han Solo. And this is probably one of the most beautiful moments of all the original trilogy, because it's when you see the real face of the characters. Not before that. Before that are characters. In that moment is when you see a real person, because it's when you feel, probably I say the same in this situation. So you see the face of Carrie Fisher, she's so, because she know that probably Han died after that. And because he know nothing to lose, for someone like him, he say what he feel in that moment. And this is real. And it's some, you have this tool when you want to do something more realistic, when you want to connect with the people, because you need to find links between the character and the person in front of you, in a theater play, in a novel, in a comic book, in a movie, in the TV, or wherever. And I know that in some cases, this history is so personal, and it's very, some way, easy to connect with someone. You don't have the temptation to, in some way, forget the realistic point of view, because you don't have any data any paper when you read how Elisa and Marcela think. No, you only have a few. I think that, well, you read the novel. I don't have the opportunity, but you don't have enough. You told before, you don't have data material to create, and you don't have the temptation try to be Elisa or Marcela and think about what do you do in the same situation.
That's probably inevitable in this case, because I'm working on literally nothing in that case. So I totally did that in some ways. Some are very clear, because I have a thing with having bags around. I always try to put a little frog or a little bag or something in my stories. I don't know why that is, but I just do it a lot, and I did it in this case as an excuse to make them interact the first time. So that's something that it's very me in a way. But I always put a lot of myself, I think, in my characters. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. A lot of people would say it's a bad thing, because
It's your choice. I think you are the
yes,
creator.
probably.
You have this prerogative to do. You are the creator. You have this choice. It's your choice if you want to put yourself in
Yes,
the
but
thing to create.
you're risking making every character like too alike, and in reality you have contrast, and that's what makes conflicts and interesting in life. And maybe if you are trying to portray that, you are going to need different characters that that are act differently. So I don't think I have yet reached enough distance with this particular comic to think about all of this. So I wouldn't be able to tell how much of me is in Elisa in my Elisa and my Marcela. But there's probably a lot, and it being a kind of a romantic comic, if you want to say that, there's probably a lot of the things I like to find in romance. You know, the kind of tender interaction, as opposed to maybe confrontations. You know, there are people that like maybe enemies to lovers and all that stuff. I'm more soft to the tender stuff, and you are going to find more of that in my view of Elisa and Marcela than maybe, you know, when they are getting closer by just doing these jokes and puns to one another. That's more of that one topic. I like that topic, but maybe not as much as the other softer ones. So that approach is probably connected to what I like to read or to see in other creations. So that's already a me that I'm putting out. But I've never been too good at you know, maybe playing a role playing game. And that's something I actually would like to get better at and do more, because if you want to write, I feel it's kind of important, or at least I'm interested in trying to do that better, not to put myself in the characters, but to be able to think like them, like they would, not so much as having my own fears or desires or whatever and put them inside them. It's more, I find it interesting to do the other thing, to be able to think outside of yourself, to be able to see what other people find desirable or interesting, or whatever their path.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that comic like Elisa and Marcela or many other option that now is possible to find in the Spanish comic book market will be held not only to the new generation, because now with internet, in some way, everything is more easy to find. But do you believe that this type of cultural offer help to change the mentality in a country like Spain?
Comics certainly haven't. I mean, not enough people read comics in Spain to be able to make a change. Maybe Arrugas by Paco Roca helped people empathize with old people, you know? Maybe because a lot of people read Arrugas, and it was something that, you know, a lot of people gifted their relatives when wanted to make a present or something. But the others, it's very, very difficult because there's very little readers. But in the case of, if we take the question as can culture artifacts make an impact, for sure, I would say yes. I think they have that power, but you know, it's not something that changes the world from one day to the other. It's more like education. You know, I put a lot of faith in education, but I know it's a very slow thing. You know, we like to believe that if the young generations get educated in a democratic way and with all the tools and the quality of the education by their side, maybe they'll be able to, you know, we'll be able to build a better society. I think culture does that in a way as well. It's this kind of slow building of empathy towards people that are different, empathy towards the problems in the world, and all of these things that, you know, they are trying to show you different realities that you don't know, and to raise different questions that maybe you have not answered. You may not be able to answer, but it seems interesting that you ask them yourself. And that's powerful and that's important, but it does not make change happen like that.
I know.
It does make an impact, I think.
No, the thing is, when I knew that you make this comic book, I say it's good, because I, especially because if you know how to use internet. The thing is, I moved to Finland almost 2 decades ago, and when I arrived here, when I left Spain, internet is, if you want to use internet in the best way possible, you need to use a professional internet, and in that moment, you need to pay. If you compare, because in that moment was before the euros, you need to pay something around 120 euros per month to have a good internet connection, because I told it in the beginning of the 21st century, between 2001 2002, when I moved to Finland. I moved to Finland the first time in 2002, and when I arrived here, I applied from internet connection, and was easy, was cheaper, and worked wonderful if you compare on how the things were in Spain. And for me was a new beginning, because I understand that in that moment there are not too many things in internet, no, like actually, but there are many things, especially here. And how the people use internet here was a totally different approach than in Spain. Now it's in some way it's the same. But I believe that, for example, with this comic book, that is possible to download legally through internet. There are more people that, especially not only girls, because I believe that Elisa, the story of Elisa and Marcela, is good that the boys read. Because in a country where in all the world is the same, even in Finland. But in countries like Spain, to be a boy is very easy to compare to be a girl. You know perfectly well, because you are a girl, I am a boy. Much more older than you, and when I was of your age, I don't need to think about many topics that you need to think. And I really believe that it's good that the new generation, not only girls, the boys and girls, read this type of comics, because and try to understand how difficult was live in this situation. And after that, one thing I really like of this comic book is in the last page, you write about, if you want more information, please read this book, go to see this display, and try to find more information, because it's the best. It's like exactly with the article I have in the art computer of Speed of Freight, is when you read this article, because she focused in the how difficult it was to be a teacher in that moment, for example. And it's when you really understand. I believe that the ideas like that is good, but it's more easy from is one reason. For that reason, I really like Paracuellos of Carlos Jiménez, is because if you read a book about the Falange Española or about Auxilio Social, you need to sit down and read a 500 page with a lot of information, a lot of data. For me, it's nice because I really like this type of book, but for a normal guys, no. It's more easy to read 2-3 pages from, because Paracuellos is a mix between small stories. It's more easy to read. It's more easy to understand, and it's more easy to emphasize from the characters, like you told before. And with Elisa and Marcela, the comic book is exactly the same. It's a small period of time, but you have the opportunity to understand many topics in the best way possible. And if you really like the topic, now you have the opportunity to find more information. And I think this is quite nice. I don't know who was the person that have the idea to do this comic book, but it's a really, really good idea. I really hope that this type of ideas continue to do. Because unfortunately, I remember when I told with a Spanish editor about the comic that Marvel made in the 80s and in the 90s, when Spider-Man prevent the child's abuse. And this editor told me, hey, this comic was impossible to publish outside United States because it was only made and promote and paid in the United States. And because I am so naive, I say, and why you do not the same in Spain? And the editor look at me and say, are you crazy? You believe that you believe, because this comic was promoted from an official institution and big companies, car companies, commercial companies, companies that a lot of money. And he told me, do you believe that some company in Spain pay money, some money to make a comic book when one guy that's Spider-Man say to the child, if someone do something with you and you don't want, call this number and talk with someone and say, there's someone that is trying to do something bad with me. And this guy was a really nice guy, but he looked at me and say, are you crazy or what? And I look at say, because even the people that really like, for example, Spider-Man have no idea about this comic, because this was only from United States, and say, Spider-Man try to, nah, this is not fun. I like to be how Gwen Stacy died, for example, to put one topic from the same character. And when I talk with some editor and tell me, are you crazy? Do you believe that someone pay from that? Any company pay from that in Spain? No. And when I see that a official place like the Consejo of Cultura of Galicia promote, and I hope pay to you your job to do this. Yes, I don't know. I hope I don't say anything about that, and do something with some topic that I remember when the marriage between people of the same sex began in Spain. Many people, many mayors decide not to do, because from them was, no, this is not right. And there are some law that say, hey, you need to do. They don't do, they do in a major, there are more people than the main character in that case. But I remember it was a shock, because many people, for example, in my hometown in Gran Canaria, the mayor in that moment say, no, I don't want to do, it's against my, and I say, well, there are other persons that do in the same way.
But I, for what I've seen, I've already done quite a lot of kind of social focused comics for institutions, and I'm seeing that's actually a thing that's normal now, because I got this gig by the guys at Consello da Cultura Galega, because they were doing a lot of other activities for that. It was a Pride month. They wanted to, publish it that Pride month, and they were doing a lot of other activities. They were really, really focused on that social themes. And I also did a lot of things for another different foundation about, it was to promote reading amongst young kids. And they explicitly told me to make like the cast, to make it diverse as much as I wanted, and a lot of other things that come from institutions. So I would say now there are a lot of institutions or associations or foundations that actually want to talk about these topics and put out work that focuses on these things, even maybe more than what a lot of creators are doing by themselves, which is totally okay. But I see a lot of explicit commissions to talk about social topics, and that's a really good thing.
No, it's really nice. The last question normally is some way the more difficult from the comic book artist, but I think it's necessary to do. I probably you don't know, but when I arrived in Finland, the Spanish was not one of the main topic to study. There are not too many people that speak, read, and understand Spanish. But from the last 10 years, in the secondary, it's possible to choose Spanish like the fourth language. Here they study Finnish, Swedish, English normally, and they have the opportunity to choose German, French, and many people choose Spanish. For that reason, I remember one day I stayed in a film festival waiting to the next movie, and I received a call and I began to talk in Spanish. When I finished the call, the woman near to me say, "Are you from Spain?" And I look at her and say, yes, no, because she began to talk with me in Spanish. And before that, 10 years before, there are only a few people that not only understand speak Spanish. For that reason, if someone wants to read your comic, now it's more easy because it's possible to order through internet. And I know that it's not your job is to do the comic book. You have one edit. In that case, for example, with Sallybooks, there are one people that spend their time to try to sell your job. But what do you say to someone that if you put in front of someone, you are in theory in front of people, because this is inside a comic book festival in Helsinki. And probably there are people that not only understand English, there are people that understand Spanish. And imagine that there are people that think about to read your comic book. How you sell your job to these people? I know that
I hate you.
I know that the question is because someone, hey, you write, you do comics, I write books, and someone asked me exactly the same question. I don't create this question. I only remember the first time that someone look at me and say, why I need to spend my money in your book? And I look at this person and say, wow, good question. I don't know.
It's hard because when I recommend people, I want to recommend them something. I always take a lot of focus on what they like. I mean, I'm very aware that not everything is for everybody, and
I
I'm
know.
aware for that about my own job. I mean, even more than with other things. But I'm a person that says a lot, this thing. This may not be for everybody, and I say that about my job first and foremost, um, because and I know. I mean, I do a lot of different things. I've done a lot of different things. For example, Dragon Seal is, high fantasy adventure for. It's meant to be for young people, so it's not for the same people as I would recommend maybe Elisa and Marcela. I myself, I know booksellers sell my books better than me. So I would need to know what the people like to read, what their age is, um, if they like romance, if they like fantasy, because that way I can direct them to maybe one of the books, because I know mm, maybe you wouldn't like all of my books. You would like maybe more the one that is about historical characters like Elisa and Marcela, or maybe the adventurous ones from Dragon Seal. It's very different, but what links them all and what I think is my best tools is drawing, because I always say that I'm an artist first, and I guess in my own way, in my own style, I can feel some pride in my drawing and in my coloring maybe, and my use of expressions, and what I was telling you earlier, the details I put in human interaction is something that I like, and it's something I think I do well, maybe. But there's something you need to know about my books, and it's they all feel short. I feel I always fall very short in the length of the stories. They always feel like you're missing something. They can't breathe properly. But the last one I sent you in that CV, I See a Night, is a story that's coming out from Shortbox, and I don't know, it's maybe coming out in September, October. It was a Kickstarter we had running July to August. It's close to ending, but you can get the books afterwards. And that story, I wrote the idea as an eight-page story, but then the publisher told me, please make it into a longer one so we can publish it in this short box. And so it became a 36-page project. And it's, I think, the first time that a book by me breathes correctly and it has the length it deserves. And I'm very proud of it so far. So you know, that's the one I would right now point to shamelessly and say, you know, I think this is my best thing to date, and it's in English. So I would say check I See a Night if you want to know what I'm about.
I don't want to say this, but probably I think you are not only much better creator, you are much more older. Because I know I have the same feeling with the different things I did in my life. And in one moment, you find the right balance. You find exactly the right balance to do the things you want to do.
Yes.
Because I know exactly what do you do. Because I have the same feeling when I finish my first book, and I feel the same during many years until one day is when I understand that you don't find the end find to you. And I remember that when I write the last chapter, and I don't put the end because it's that case one theoretical aside about some comic book characters and comic book artists is not necessary. But when I finish, I know that was the finish. Before that, I carry with this feeling that I finish, but I don't want to finish. I want to do more things. And one day, after almost a decade to work in the same area, it's like when the exhibition I spent maybe, I don't know, 15 years, that when I finish an exhibition, the next 2 days I change something inside one cabinet because I am not happy with how the things look. And one day I finish one exhibition, return the same day. I don't feel that I need to change anything because I feel that anything is in the right place. But anyone say anything to me is when I arrive, I finish, switch off the light, return the same day, the next day, maybe 1 hour before the exhibition began, because it's something I really like to see is everything is in the right place before the opening day. And it's when normally I open and change and do things 5 minutes before the door is open, because I know that this is not a good idea, but I always find something is not the right place. And one day I go see and sit down and spend maybe 1 hour reading something until the door was open, because I don't feel that it's necessary to change anything. And it's not because anyone says something. It's because I have enough background and I am much more older. And I understand that sometimes it's much more inside your mind than in the real, in front of you. It's not what you feel. It's not what you see. It's what do you feel. And I think I say this. When I read Ari, I feel the same. I feel that you want to say much more. You and
Manuel.
Manuel, because I think this is possible to do a 96 page with this story, not only. And I think I told with Manuel about this too, because when he gave me the comic book one day in a Barcelona Comic Convention, and I read the same day. And when I arrived the next day, because it's in front of the stand of my editorial in that moment, I told with him and say, "Oh, yeah, I really like, but I want more. What is the next part? You have the second album? No, it's only this, only this. I want to know much more about, I don't know, many things." Even I put some notes in the comic book, and I read with the comic and ask a few things. And I think the same feeling. But now when you told me that, I think it's not only because you are much more ordered than when you do this, it's because you are much better creator. Because it's when you understand how the things work and how your feelings work. And I think this is the best way to present your job.
In Dragon Seal, in Dragon Seal it's a bit of a special thing because the first album had a concrete length, so it's also kind of the circumstances and how fast I was to make all the pages. The first one had no solution because it had to be 48 pages, but the second one, in Nira's case, we put more things in and reach, I think, 56 pages, and that was okay. But you know, the kind of more that comes from Manuel is different from my more, because Manuel would like to maybe add some information about some of the, I don't know, how that city works and what that faction wants, or you know, kind of data. And what I want to put is like 3 more panels to show one interaction in more detail, you know. For this interaction to breathe correctly, I want to see how this character reacts and now how the other character reacts, you know, that kind of stuff, to add a bit of breath to the little things, while you know, maybe the writer is thinking more about, I want to add more information so you know how this world works.
You want to show
yes.
see, it's like the fight against the the
It's two
storyboard
different
and
kinds
the
of
screenplay.
space.
See,
Yes.
I know the feeling.
But we work very well together, but you know, each of us would like to have a little bit more space to tell the things in these books. But that's complicated because adding pages is it's
No,
infinite. You could add infinite pages and
yes, no,
keep
and
adding more.
yes, you need to. Unfortunately, in that area, you need to understand that every page is much more expensive than the other, and you need to understand that the editor say you have 100 page, 50, 34,
Yes.
or whatever. You need to think about that. Even for you, it's so complicated. And this is a comic book festival, and I hope that someone that draw comics, write comics, or do things like I do to write essays about comic book artists or comic book characters, you need to understand that if you put inside, even if you put inside, you put free in the internet, not everyone have the capacity to read an essay with 150 pages.
Yes.
Even if you have a big computer and big screen and wherever, because unfortunately there are some limits you need to respect. And for that reason, in the beginning is, oh, I want to, but not. But because you need to think about, put in the other side and understand that not everyone has the same capacity. And if for you it's difficult, imagine from someone that don't have the same background and for someone don't have the same feeling like you, because I think after all this time, the people understand you really like your job and the thing you do. And exactly in my case, if not, you and me probably work in a different area. But for you and for me, for you and for me, it's difficult to read something. Imagine from someone that is only a hobby, not the job. That's the thing.
Yes.
Julia, it's like the same time. The same time, my idea is talking only 1 hour, but we spend something like today, 1 hour and a half. I hope two things. I hope the people understand much better not only how this country think about topic like the relations between two persons with the same sex, and how the society thinks about the homosexuality. I hope that people understand that how important is find people like you that have the capacity to draw and to show these things to the older and the new generation. And I invite, because this is my job, like something like told me the ambassador of Spain, Finland, hey, you will be in some way the ambassador of the comic book in Spain, because this specific event, this part of the event, when the Spain is the guest country in the Helsinki Comic Festival, is a small business card to present, especially the work of the new generation, because the older generation, I told in the text that is in the web page that they are a Finnish version of Mortadelo y Filemón. And there are 40 albums published in Finland of Mortadelo y Filemon between 1933 to 2006. But from the new generation, there are not too many examples in the Finnish market actually. And I hope this meeting, and I hope that all the job around this and the exhibition, the retrospective exhibition about all the authors that have been invited to this event, help to promote the things that people like you do actually in the Spanish market, even are in English, even are in Chinese, or even are in Gallego. I think this is the thing that the ambassador told me 2 years ago, and I hope I do in the best way possible. I told you before, I probably need to go to the Chinese embassy to talk about the war between Yellow Emperor and Young Emperor. And I hope that I have the opportunity to see Asianite when the book is in the market. Because the book is in English, please do the same thing like me. Go to some special library or go to internet to find the book because it's in English and almost everyone read English in Finland perfectly well. And I hope we will have the opportunity to meet again soon to present the first album of the Dragon Seals, and wherever you want to present if you continue to meet with me through this channel. Thank you very much.
Yes, we'll see. I hope so too.
I hope too. If you have enough patience to support my talk, I hope we have the opportunity to meet again. Thank you very much. Please stay safe and take care of you because the situation in Spain, unfortunately, is not like here. Even in Finland, the situation is not so good that I would like. Please go to the webpage of the Helsinki Comic Festival when you see the CV of Xulia and where it's possible to find, for example, the link to the Elisa and Marcela PDF to read the comic book and all the information about her jobs. Thank you very much, and we will see in the next meeting.
Thank you.